Now on this channel, all we talk about is no code. We talk about all the different app builders that exist right now that allow you to build apps without writing a single line of code. We talk about all the different apps, all the different types of apps that you can build using any one of these no-code builders. We also dive deeper into each one of these no-code builders in order to figure out which one of this is ideal for the type of app you're going to be building. In fact, I had a big comparison video where I compared something like 15 different no-code builders in order to tell you which one I feel is the best for most people out there. And so generally speaking, you will be able to have an app regardless of which no-code app builder that you build. But there's something important you guys need to figure out. Building an app is just the beginning. You need to actually launch the app. You need to maintain the app. You need to scale the app. There's lots and lots of things that need to happen after you actually build and launch your app. So while, yes, you can build an app, once you launch the app and actually maintain it, that's a completely different ball game. And so in today's video, I want to tell you what I think is one of the best features when it comes to FlutterFlow is that it allows you to build the app that you want, but you have complete control after you are done because you have the code to the app that you can do pretty much anything that you want to do with it. Now, before we continue, I want to quickly remind you that a couple of days ago, I launched my first ever training since starting this channel. The training is called Mastering FlutterFlow, and it's about helping you master FlutterFlow. Now, I'm having a special discount through the weekend, and so today is the last day in order to get the amazing training at a really amazing price. You can learn more about the training in the link in the description below. Now, here I am in Bubble, and Bubble is an awesome no-code app builder. I have a bunch of apps that I did here in Bubble, and it's a great tool for building apps. I can also launch my app here in Bubble, no problem. But I can't take this code anywhere. If I can't take this code and launch it on my server. I can't take this code and do something that I want with it. Same thing with Adalo. Here I am in Adalo. I have a bunch of apps that I built before. And so I can launch the app as well on Adalo, but I can't take this code. I can't do anything with it. And that means even if I finish developing the app, even if I'm happy with the app, I have to keep paying Bubble. I have to keep paying Adalo. I have to keep paying in order to keep using these tools so that they do not remove my apps, so that they do not delete the apps that I have. But that is not the case when it comes to FlutterFlow, because with FlutterFlow, I have full control over the apps that I build. So I can design this app, I can launch it with FlutterFlow, or I can simply take this code, forget about FlutterFlow, and launch the app exactly how I wanted to launch it. And in my opinion, this is one of the most underrated features of FlutterFlow that makes it an amazing no-code builder. Not only does it allow you to build super awesome, super flexible apps with a very intuitive interface, but I also have full control over the code. That means I can easily launch it wherever I want, however I want, and that's an awesome thing, as you're going to see a little bit later in the video. Now, here I have an app that I built in one of the previous videos. This is an app that allows you to enter ChatGPT prompts. I actually had a video a couple of days ago where I talked about this app and how it works. Now, let's say you finish developing your apps. Okay, you have two options at this point. The first option is you can let FlutterFlow handle everything from now on. So let's say I have this app, I can preview it on a desktop screen. I can go on an iPad, it's responsive, it looks great. Here is an iPhone 14 Pro Max, looks also amazing. I can come here to settings and integration, and I can go to mobile development. And here I have a bunch of options that allows me to deploy my FlutterFlow project to the App Store and Play Store with CodeMagic. And so all I really need to do is enter the build number, the app version. I need to enter my issuer ID, key ID, app ID for the App Store. And I need to fill out a couple of other things for the Google App Store. And so if you're going to be launching your app in these platforms, You will sign up with, with Apple, you're going to sign up with Google, and you're going to get your private keys, you're going to get your credentials, you're going to fill this out, and you're going to launch it here. Another really nice thing is when it comes to building web apps. Now, when I was out building this app, I decided this is going to be purely a web app, okay? This is not going to be a mobile app. I'm not going to, build an app that you're going to use natively on an iPhone or an Android device. This is going to be a web app. And with web apps, you can launch them really easily on a website. And that is exactly what I did. So I went to web publishing. I entered my site URL here. It's actually going to be set up on a FlutterFlow.app domain. I played around with a couple of settings there, and you can also enter a title, site description. You can upload a fav icon. You can have a social share image, and you can also do a custom domain. And so what that means is that, if you don't want to launch your app to be on a FlutterFlow.app domain, you want to actually have a nice brand associated with it. Maybe you bought a domain, and you want that app to be accessible on its own domain, which is exactly what you're going to be doing if you're going to be seriously launching this app. And so if you're building a web app and you want that web app to be accessible by users, you're going to be promoting that web app, chances are you're not going to be launching it on a FlutterFlow.app as a subdomain. You're going to go out, you're going to build a domain, you're going to enter it here, and you're going to say connect. And that way your app is going to be sitting on a domain that you bought. This is an awesome functionality. And this is a great way to launch the app, which is exactly what I did here. So my app is live here. I can make changes. I can hit publish. I can view it. This is really, really nice. But still, here I'm launching an app that's still running on FlutterFlow's network. It's still running on their platform. What if I wanted to take my app with me and launch it the way I want? What if, I don't want to use FlutterFlow anymore. I built my app. I'm happy with it. I don't want to do any more development. I just want to launch the app, and I want to launch it for really, really cheap, or maybe even for free. And I just want that app to sit there and to answer requests and to do its job. And I don't really care about FlutterFlow anymore. Well, as you're going to see shortly, this is also a very, very straightforward thing to do. Now, if you want to take your app out of FlutterFlow, here's what you need to do. The first thing that you need to do is you need to go to developer menu and you need to download the code. What this is going to do is going to generate and zip up this Flutter code for you. And you're going to have a standalone app in your hands, which means that you actually have full control over the code as though you wrote the whole thing, which you kind of did, even though you used the UI interface. But you're going to have the generated code that you can do pretty much anything that you want to do. Now, once you've generated the code, there's still a couple of things that you need to do before you can actually make sense of this code. The first thing that you need to do is you need to download Flutter. Very, very simple. You can just head over to flutter.dev and you can click on Get Started. And on the screen, you can just download the framework and the runtime for your particular platform. So if you have a Windows PC, Mac OS, Linux, or you're using Chrome OS, okay? So you can just download that. Once you've downloaded this, the next thing you want to do is you want to download an environment, okay? This is an environment which is going to allow you to manage your code a lot better, okay? There are two options when it comes to this, and they're both free. The first option is Visual Studio Code. The second option is Android Studio. Now, I personally use Visual Studio Code, and this is probably an option I recommend for starting out with. And so you can just head over to Visual Studio Code. You can pick the platform that you're using. It supports Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, so you can choose your particular operating system. Just download the stable release here. Now, regardless of which app you installed, whether it's Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, you're going to open it up and you're going to head over to File and you're going to say Open Folder. Once you do that, you're going to open up the directory of the code that you downloaded. So once you've downloaded the code, you can just unzip it. That's going to unpack it inside a directory. And this is what directory is going to look like. So here I am inside the directory of the code of the zip file that I downloaded from FlutterFlow, right? This is the exact app that I have. that I opened up here. And so I'm looking at my app that I've built. This is a couple of files here. And as you can see, it says here, check out some cool GPT prompts, which is, if you go back to my app, this is kind of what this text is right here. And so what we are looking at right now is a Flutter project, okay? This is no longer FlutterFlow. This is Flutter, because FlutterFlow is nothing more than a wrapper on top of Flutter. It allows you to build Flutter apps in a very visual UI style, which is an awesome way. And even myself, somebody who comes from a software engineering background, I definitely prefer a UI way of building apps, such as using FlutterFlow, than by doing it by hand, which is a lot more involved. It's a lot easier using a UI builder. And so once you have this app downloaded and opened up inside one of these editors here, whether it's Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, you're pretty much freed from FlutterFlow. You no longer need it. You can cancel your account if you want. You can, stop your membership. You can stop using them. And so you can even modify the code here. You can keep developing it, or you can now launch this code and do exactly what you want with it. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to show you that are super, super important, and every single one of you watching this video needs to know how to do. The first thing is that you want to run this code on a real emulator, okay? So it's one thing running this code inside of FlutterFlow. So if I head over to FlutterFlow, I can test this code here, or I can even run it here. But before you actually launch the app, before you actually submit it to one of the app stores, or you launch it to prospective customers or clients or whoever, you want to make sure that your mobile apps are actually running perfectly on an emulator, okay? So whether you're using Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, I'm going to be showing it to you using Visual Studio Code, you want to run the app in an emulator. And so I have this app open inside Visual Studio Code. I haven't done anything yet. What I want to do is I want to click here, and once I click here, I'm going to have a couple of options. Okay, so in my case, I have Chrome here, and I have an iOS simulator. I have a Pixel here as well, and I can also enable macOS for this project. So I can test it as a desktop app, I can test it as a mobile app, and I can also test it inside a simulator. So let's say I want to test this app in a simulator. Well, I'm going to start my simulator first. And what it's doing is it's loading up the simulator here. And so it just loaded the actual simulator. And this is a real simulator from Apple. This is the real thing, or at least as real as it gets to an actual device. And I can control a bunch of things regarding this device. So I can come in here, I can open another simulator, might be an iPad or another iPhone. I can restart it, I can change some settings, I can, enable Face ID, I can do a lot of things. But what I really want to do is I want to test my app inside this emulator here, inside the simulator. So in order to do that, once I have the simulator connected here, as you can see, I can now run this app. So I'm going to go to run, and I'm going to do run without debugging. And it's going to run this app, and it's going to launch it in my emulator. And here's that ChatGTP prompts app running in an iPhone emulator, okay? So I can drag it down, I can change some of the settings, I can increase it, I can decrease it. And right away, I see a couple of issues. I see that there's a right overflow, okay? So I have some text, and it's overflowing, whereas it should wrap around. And this is something I have to fix. It's very, very easy to fix. But other than that, I can see that this app is actually perfect. It looks really, really good. Now, I can also test it inside an Android emulator. I can come in here. I can pick my Pixel 6 Pro. I can start my new emulator here. Now it's running, and I can go ahead and I can run the app. And now it's going to load this app inside an Android emulator. And here's the app running on an Android emulator. So we also have some overflowing. Obviously, I can also drag down. I can, download this. I can upload something. It looks like it's pretty good. It's running really, really decently. And this is actually the first time I am testing it on a real device here. So I just need to fix this up. It's very, very simple. But other than that, it looks like it's running perfectly. And so now that you've tested it on mobile devices, if that's your goal, if that's what you're planning to do, you're good to go. And you can build this app and you can actually submit this app to either App Store or the Google Store or both if you want. Now, remember, initially I mentioned how this app is designed from the ground up to be purely a web app. So I wasn't going to release this app natively on an iPhone or an Android device. I was just going to use it on the web. And here's where I saved the best for last, because you can take this code of the app that you build, you can build it, and you can publish it on a server that you control, and it's going to cost you almost nothing to launch and run this app on the internet. And so if you want to launch this as a web app, all you have to do is head over to this terminal tab here, and you have to issue the following command. So you see this command right here. I'm going to enter it here, and what it's going to do is it's going to build my app to be served on a web. And now it finished building my app for the web. It took 23.7 seconds. And now if I head over to the directory or where my project is, this is what the directory looks like. If I go into the build directory and I go into the web directory, I now have my full app here as a bunch of files. And now all I need to do is upload the contents of this directory to a server that's going to be hosting my app. Now, when it comes to picking the server where you want to host the app, you have a ton of options. You can start with something very, very simple, such as hosting a static website using Amazon S3, which is part of Amazon Web Services, Amazon AWS. And so if you haven't heard about it, definitely check it out. It allows you to host apps and do a bunch of other things for absolute pennies. And so you can host this app with Amazon Web Services, and it's going to cost you like maybe a cent a month or something like that. It's going to cost you almost nothing. Another option that you have is you can host your site on DigitalOcean's static site platform. And so you can simply Google for something like DigitalOcean static site, and it says here how to deploy a static website to the cloud. You can just read about it. And I believe there's even like a free plan where you can host one of your sites for absolutely free on DigitalOcean. But regardless which service you pick, it's going to cost you almost nothing, if not nothing, to host this web service. And right now, let me show you how I can launch this app on my Amazon AWS account. I've already set up my Amazon AWS account. I've been using AWS for many, many years, so you can read tutorials on how to do it. It's very, very simple. Here I'm logged into my Amazon AWS account. I'm inside the S3 bucket called James NoCode. This is where I store things having to do with this channel. Now on the left-hand side, I'm inside my main directory of my project. And now I can simply go into Build. I can go into Web. And all I need to do is copy the contents of this into this folder here. So I'm going to copy all of this. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to wait for this to finish. And if I head over to this website here, which is what I have configured with my Amazon S3, I can just press enter, and it's going to download the complete web app. And right now you're looking at an app hosted on a platform that I control. It's now hosted in my own bucket on Amazon AWS S3 bucket. And this is a service that anybody can sign up with. It's an awesome service, fully scalable, and it's going to cost you almost nothing. And so right now, this app is probably going to cost me like maybe a cent a month or something like that. It's going to cost me almost nothing. And so at this point in time, I'm not dependent on FlutterFlow. You know, if I'm not interested in developing this app in FlutterFlow, I can just leave this app here and not use FlutterFlow anymore. Obviously, if I want to continue development, I can just continue using FlutterFlow, get my code, launch it here, and it's going to cost me almost nothing for my app to exist here. And so not only do you have absolute ability to test the code, test the apps that you're building in real emulators, whether you're building for the app to be running on Android devices or for the app to be running on iOS devices, but you can also take this code and launch it and have this app available on the internet for absolutely free, if not a penny here or penny there. And in my view, this is an amazing thing. This is truly an amazing thing because this gives you the freedom to do whatever you want with the apps that you build. You're no longer tied to the platform. And so you don't need to keep paying Bubble. You don't need to keep paying Adalo for the apps to be available to your users. You can code this app inside of FlutterFlow. Once you're happy with the app, you could take the code and do whatever you want with it and test it out, but then you can also launch it as a static site, even though this is not a static site. And the reason it works is because this is a JavaScript site. It's running inside the user's browser. And that is an incredible way to launch your sites because you're essentially launching them as static standalone apps. You're not launching them on top of some platform. You're launching them as static standalone apps, and this is incredible. And so now I have this app running in my own S3 bucket. I have it connected to my own domain. I'm happy, and I don't really need to worry about security or scaling or anything like that. It's an amazing way to launch your apps. And so not only is FlutterFlow an amazing builder for building and designing your apps, but I think one of the most underrated features is that you have 100% control of the code that you build. You can do anything that you want with it, and you don't have to keep paying a platform. You don't have to keep paying those bills to have the app running. You can take it, you can launch it anywhere that you want, and I think this is an amazing thing. And everybody needs to know how to do this. Everybody needs to know how to test your app on an emulator and then launch it on some kind of a static site service with DigitalOcean, Amazon S3, or any of the other tens or even hundreds of services available today. Now, if you guys are interested in taking your no-code knowledge up a couple of notches and really improving it in the upcoming year, then you definitely want to check out my Patreon page. Not only will you get access to all the apps that I built on this channel, whether it's FlutterFlow or any of the other no-code builders out there, you can view and or clone all the apps that I built, but you're going to get access to more content, Q&As, live streams, different series. I'm planning to start a podcast really soon where I'm going to be talking about different things that I'm working on, different challenges that I face, lots and lots of extra content. And all of this extra content is going to be exclusively available on my Patreon page. We have an amazing community over there to which I'm eternally grateful for. And also joining my Patreon is an amazing way of supporting this channel and supporting my work. So if you haven't yet joined, I highly encourage you to do so. And so this will do it for today's video. I really hope you've gotten value here. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. And I will see you in a future video.